Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. We have a distinguished panelists here, and I hope you're all excited to be joining this webinar, which is simply titled Effective Ways to Manage Data Protection and Privacy Risk Within the Organization. As usual, we have an interesting lineup of speakers within our panelists as well, and obviously we hope that this will create the usual exciting activity and stimulate a lot of discussion as part of this. My name is Joe Dede, but just before I go through, I'd just like to give you a quick thanks to our sponsors on this occasion: Privacy Solved, Data Privacy Manager, the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and of course our good selves, DataWorks Analytics. Like I said, my name is Joe Dede. I probably don't need to introduce myself too much, but I'm the incumbent CTO of DataWorks Analytics and have been with this company from the outset. And of course, taking you through our journey, our compliance journey, as we engage with clients and attendees on our webinars alike. And yeah, we'll continue striving and growing forward as we always do. Our panelists today, very pleased to have with us Wayne Cleghorn, who is the Chief Executive Officer and Practice Director at Privacy Solved. Privacy Solved is a multidisciplinary team based in the UK that provides data protection, global privacy, as well as e-privacy and compliance and cybersecurity to a host of clients, both locally in the UK and globally. They primarily help companies and organizations to establish and develop their privacy and e-security offerings. Part of Wayne's role as a Chief Executive Officer is primarily to be involved in international data governance. He's also a consultant and lawyer at My Business Council and has been involved in a number of high-profile roles during his course. He has advised 3 UK secretaries State of Health on governance and data protection, privacy, confidentiality, as well as information governance and issues in the 12 billion national program for IT as the national at a national level. He's also advised and led GDPR projects in international banks, fintech, and extra. And more recently, he's been asked to set up the famous Brexit data protection service for national government and has advised on cybersecurity impacts of COVID-19. Our next panelist is Oluyemi Obadare, who is with us again, but in a slightly different capacity under the auspices of the Nigeria Exchange Group. Now, basically, that is a recently convened group is a leading integral market infrastructure in Africa, planning to take Africa to the next level, not just from a stock exchange perspective, but also working closely with its subsidiaries to deliver a range of services. So these subsidiaries include the Nigeria Exchange Limited, Nigeria Regulation Limited, and NGX Real Estate. In Oluyemi's capacity as the Business Continuity and Information Security Manager, she has advised on governance, risk, and compliance issues as well. And she has extensive knowledge and practical experience in conducting and developing and implementing business impact analysis. In terms of information security, her experience spans implementing administration and maintenance of information security controls and processes. And she's presently in her newly role, excited as usual, coordinating and monitoring and improving information security management systems at NGX or NXG, but it's basically NGX. She coordinates a large team and is responsible for maintaining the global standards for information security and management systems, as well as business recovery. So we're excited to have her, and obviously, please do give her a welcome. She's been with us previously on one of our other webinars. Our final panelist today needs no introduction, but I will introduce him again because we can't do that, is Marian Bratchett. He's the co-founder of Data Privacy Manager and Data Privacy Director in Poslovna Inteligentia, based in the wonderful city of Zagreb. In the past 15 years, he has engaged with clients in the field of data analysis, data management, and data protection. And today, even though he's very humble about it, he's overseeing the data privacy manager's development and helping companies build and their continuous privacy programs. So we're pleased to have him again. Marion is also a member of the Forum of Cybernetics and Data Security for National Council. So welcome, Marion, and welcome to all our panelists. During the course of this webinar, we will be going through a number of things, and primarily what is the whole concept of risk? Risk means a lot to different people. Some people might equate it to political risk or operational risk, but we're looking particularly here at data protection and data privacy risk. She's been with us previously on one of our other webinars. Our final panelist today needs no introduction, but I will introduce him again because we can't do that, is Marian Bracic. He's the co-founder of Data Privacy Manager and Data Privacy Director in Poslovna Inteligentia, based in the wonderful city of Zagreb. In the past 15 years, he has engaged with clients in the field of data analysis, data management, and data protection. And today, even though he's very humble about it, he's overseeing the data privacy manager's development and helping companies build and their continuous privacy programs. So we're pleased to have him again. Marion is also a member of the Forum of Cybernetics and Data Security for National Council. So welcome, Marion, and welcome to all our panelists. During the course of this webinar, we will be going through a number of things, and primarily what is the whole concept of risk? Risk means a lot to different people. Some people might equate it to political risk or operational risk, but we're looking particularly here at data protection and data privacy risk. How is that managed? Is there a rule book for this? Is there a formal strategy? Or is this simply just a case of just appointing a DPO and getting a good collective set of minds and intellectuals? It's not quite that simple, hence the reason why we organize this webinar, and hence why there's also food for thought. To a lot of people, what would be the African concepts with regards to risk? Is it just a case of dealing with risk during companies? Is it dealing with political risk? Or is there a little bit of all that intertwined? It sometimes may seem that straightforward, depending on which source of information you look at. However, there are wider things to look at. I'd like to bring on our first speaker, Oluyemi Obadare, who I'm going to open the floor to, but I'm basically going to start by asking very, very simple, why is risk management so important with NDPR and data protection compliance? Oluyemi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you very much, everyone. You're welcome to this webinar again. And I promise you that by the end of this, we would all be able to effectively dimension data protection, data privacy, the associated risk, and the strategy for effective and efficient implementation within our various environments. Thank you. So what is risk? So when I heard that and I smiled, because the NDPR, GDPR, as the case may be, depending on your location, the climate that you are in, it's a mitigant to a risk itself.
Thanks for that, Oluyemi, for that brief insight. My second question to you, though, is what effective risk management strategies would you recommend for managing and controlling NDPR compliance within Nigeria, as well as data protection risk?
Thank you. So I hear NDPR compliance, I'm hearing data protection. I think at this point, I want to take the liberty to dimension the two and let us know that you cannot effectively achieve the NDPR compliance, that's the data privacy, without achieving data protection. So in all, it is one. It seems it's a tiamis. You can't just separate them if you want to effectively achieve the data protection. So how does that come into play? So what is data protection? What is data privacy? I'll quickly just go into that. And so data privacy and data protection achieve one common objective, and the objective is the protection of personal information. That's the personally identifiable information. So data privacy comes from the collection of this information, disclosing and using of this, the quality of data, the access to personal information. And then the data protection part comes when you have authorized use when you have authorized access to be able to use data in an authorized manner, when the data you have has integrity and the data you have is available when it is needed, provided it's an authorized use, the use that is consented to. So the data protection and data privacy, like I said, that they go hand in hand. You can achieve data protection without data privacy. That's the information security bit of data privacy. But the data privacy says that I only make my information available to whom I want it to be available to, and I have a right to keep what I want to keep. So it says that you can have data protection, but you may not have data privacy because you don't in the first instance have what you shouldn't have about me. So I'm trying to say that data protection and data privacy must be implemented together to be able to meet the requirements of NDPR and GDPR. Now, what are the risks? There are several risks associated with this, but I'll just basically go into the key ones, the phenomenal risk with this. So the first is misinterpretation of the definition of personally identifiable information. We must be able to know what it is. What is the understanding of a personally identifiable information? We know that we would say this is no brainer, but I will just still take the liberty to just run us through this again. That's the information that can be directly linked to the data subject. That's the owner of the information. That's your full name, your date of birth, your address, email, and all that. And then the bits of data that can be combined with another form of information, or a piece of information to identify you. So that could be your first name here or your last name, a portion of your house address, and then sensitive data like your biometric, like your racial information, health information, your ethnic origin. Those ones are already sensitive. Religious belief, we know how that is in the country, political opinion, and then the sexual preferences. So all this together, you must correctly identify them, because if failure to know what you want to protect in the first place, you cannot effectively achieve protection. So the first risk is misinterpreting the definition of personally identifiable data. So the second one is inaccurate data documentation or data scope for the implementation of this regulatory requirement. And then you have the project management aspect of this, when you have a lack of prioritization or ownership roadmap, excuse me. Then you have the unrealistic timelines for implementation in a rush, just because we want to meet the requirements or we want to meet the deadline as imposed by the data controller. That's the NIDA in the case of Nigeria, because you want to do this because it's not your practice. It's something that you just want to tick, check the box, tick it and say, okay, we've done it, we met the requirements, let's move on. But if it is something that's a day-to-day operations within the environment, you wouldn't have to rush. Then lack of executive sponsorship, stakeholder management, enterprise training and awareness, these are the issues. But I will just go straight to the key thing I want us to discuss that would actually lead to ineffective implementation of this. That is the data impact assessment. The data impact assessment is very key. Failure to effectively carry out data impact assessment or data protection impact assessment would automatically lead to failure in achieving effective data protection. So basically, I'll just run us through the steps. It talks about the establishing the need and the context of data. Why do I want to collect someone's information, particularly the personally identifiable information? What is the process for? What am I collecting it for? Why do I want to process it? How do I want to share it? So in the process of identifying the need, the intention, the duration of collection, it would then help me narrow down to my collection process. So when I go through my collection process, that's documenting the use of the personal data, and then I begin to identify the associated risks. So the associated risks are part of the rights and the freedom of speech, thought, movement, provision of discrimination, the use of it, retainership, ability to recall that movement as a data subject saying, I no longer want my data to reside with you. So those are the risks as enumerated or as outlined in the GDPR and NDPR framework. Then we begin to then analyze the impact of this risk. We evaluate the risk, determine the risk acceptance within the environment, and then begin to apply controls. So in the process of applying control, we achieve data protection. So all along, we've been talking about data privacy. Who has it? Who should not have it? What are my rights? Do I even have a right to give you? When you're collecting it, am I aware? Is it unauthorized collection? Do I know that at a point of logging into your website, you have cookies there, you have information? So that's why you consent and the banner has to be there. And that's why you go to any new page now, you see that consent to, you must agree to the data privacy, you know. So you don't go to evaluation. So this what I talk about is that this is when you then have the governance structure. What is it, the governance and the data ownership within an environment? That's when you have built your policies, you have your standards and the framework, your privacy notice, like I said, the cookies for transparency at the points of collecting data in any environment. So further down, then you begin to put your technology infrastructure in place. Those are the strategies, particularly, like I said, you must be able to achieve, you must be able to put your technology infrastructure and ensure that it serves. That's the only way you can achieve effective data privacy, because part of it is that you say data subject rights, that's security, you must demonstrate compliance, the right to be informed. The right to be informed, that's the demonstrating compliance about the legal and the contractual aspect of it. So you put some security apparatus in place, your data loss protection, your intrusion detection, so that someone doesn't have unauthorized access. The same thing goes for the right of access, the right of rectification of data. You put your network segregation in place. So in an environment, you see that you have classified data, you have public data, you have internal data. So from your network segmentation, your critical information assets within the enterprise must reside there. So this gives you a layered approach, and then it helps you ensure that unnecessary access from an intruder or outside is being mitigated. Then you have the encryption mechanism, the tokenization, you have the malware protection, then the routine check from the penetration test and the patch management. You have the monitoring devices you put in place for internal monitoring and action taking for incident management. And then you talk about your data resilience, business continuity and disaster recovery aspect to be able to recover in an organization. And then you talk of your data breach and incident management, like I mentioned earlier. And most importantly, culture, training, and awareness. You know, I mentioned that when people see the timelines, is when you have an unrealistic timeline, is when you don't have this culture, there's no practice. So you want to meet the NDPR deadline.
That's fantastic, Oluyemi. Thank you very much for that deep and insightful answer to that question. I'm sure our panel of attendees will have benefited extensively from that. Thank you very much, and we'll come back to you shortly. I would like to hand the floor at this point to Wayne Clegon. Wayne, my first question is probably an easy one for you to answer, but I'm sure you'll be able to give us some context. As a chief executive officer and practice director of Privacy Solved, what is your advice to business leaders in Nigeria relating to data protection and information security risk management? I hope that's not putting you in a spot, though.
Well, hey, let me have a go at this. So advice to business leaders, I would say, please bring together data protection and data privacy together with cybersecurity. It's really the hallmark of what we actually do at Privacy Solved. One of the first conversations we have is, can we bring them together in a single conversation? And the reason why it should be a single conversation is that it's easier to understand, it's easier to manage, it's easier to budget for, it's easier to monitor. Because you will have, you know, a very technical team, or very good at software, hardware, all of that. And you will have a compliance team or an audit team or the data protection officers team, and somehow they live in separate camps, and they come together around breaches and other things. My thing has always been, and our team always pushes, to have that team speaking as one and actually referring to each other and remembering each other all the time. So that's my first point. My second point is really investment. And it really is an investment in internal skills and tools. So our engineers and our designers and our development people should be well trained in privacy and cybersecurity. So they're building in privacy by design, security by design. And also our data protection officers should be trained, to international standards. So they're part of the mix. And also where we need external expertise, that expertise should be on tap, should be sourced, should sit there. So when we need to bring them into to enrich your organization or challenge your organization, you already have these external facing tools and experts on hand. The third point I'd make is it's very modern. If you look in the big tech space, you can see that privacy and data protection is at last becoming something you can sell, something you can market, and something you can use to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. Post-COVID, things are going to change. What are we going to say to our customers who may have limited funds to get services, and also who may have trust issues? And if privacy and cybersecurity can be used as a single conversation to build trust, to get engagement, to get the monies into the coffers, do it. But what I say, and I advise this all the time, mean it. There has to be more than just words and a privacy policy that says, oh, we care about your privacy, and then everything else says the opposite. So those are my 3 points about leadership grabbing a hold of this issue, combining it, making it work for you, and actually selling it, and actually improving your bottom line as well as being a good global citizen and all those other things. So I'll stop there, really, in terms of that answer.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot for that, Wayne. If I may also defer, I guess sometimes these decisions are very difficult to make just at the board level. Hence, of course, it has to drill down through the entire organization. And of course, there is a need for responsibility, of course, to be taken by some of us at that level. But thanks a lot for that insight, and we'll definitely come back to you during the second course of our rounds of questions. I'd like to move at this point in time to Marian Bratchett. Marian, I hope you're there and with us.
I'm here.
Fantastic. My question to you is probably two-pronged. The first part being, why do you think privacy-enhancing tools are more effective for risk and incident management? And the second part being, how can privacy-enhancing tools be used to manage obviously sophisticated and maybe less complex NDPR audit risk, as well as data protection risk and third-party management risk? Thank you.
Okay, Joe, thank you for the question. And I have to say that Oluyemi and Wayne, they did a fantastic job at giving me the introduction, so I can be quite short in answering your question. So what we do is we develop a privacy management software, and we had previous webinars where we talked about different topics like records of processing activities and third-party management and consent management and so on. And as Oluyemi mentioned, and Wayne as well, data protection is made out of both security and privacy. But if you just focus on privacy, for example, there is a lot of different problems or topics or challenges that need to be solved. When you are talking about a lot of manual work, when you are talking about a lot of data, you need to automate things. The benefits of centralization or digitalization of information and having collaboration through the tool, like when Wayne mentioned, when they work with their customers, they try to make them talk as one team and work as one team. So we provide tools for that kind of thing. So collaboration, automation, and centralization, digitalization, let's call it that way. And when we talk specifically about risks and risk assessments and incident management as well, this is just some of the challenges that need to be tackled. And when you have a platform that allows you collaboration, that allows management to have an overview of the risks and the severity and the impact of the risks, when they have a team that is taking care of that, that is collaborating through the platform, when you have one view of everything and notifications. And if you think about software in general, why you would use software to solve specific issues, it is not like in our case when we talk about privacy, it's not like we have on one side GDPR or NDPR consultants and lawyers, and on the other side software. No, they work hand in hand, and software is here to make you perform less manual tasks, make you faster and more efficient, give you one central place for all documents, all information. It's good for audits, it's good when you have a rotation in the company. So people do leave companies sometimes, and it's difficult when you don't have everything centralized and in one place. And most of all, I think when we speak about cloud software equals expert systems and expert knowledge. And in a way, everything we learn from our customers, we try to build into the system so that it is easier for our new customers to make their life less difficult when doing both risk management and incident management in the scope of data protection.
Thanks a lot for that, Marion. Thank you very much. And we move on now to our next to our panelists back again. So we've got Oluyemi back on. I'd like to start by asking you this question. How did you effectively manage the closure of risk identified during the NDPR audit carried out by your organization? And second question is, what kind of advice would you offer a DPO in preparation for a breach? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let me go to the practical way in which we handle the NDPR compliance within the exchange group, the then Nigerian Stock Exchange. But the beauty of it is that we have done the second year reassessments again. So this is become part of the system. So it's a process that keeps improving. Okay, so what I basically would say here is that no man is an island. So NDPR regulation, you see, when we talk about the data, inflow and outflow of data, inbound, so it's not even one part of the organization that takes data. So that means that there must be an effective stakeholder engagement. Every part of the organization, and I saw in the poll, every part of the organization, everyone must know that. So that's where the awareness part comes into play. You know, when there's no law, there's no crime, there's no offense. So when everyone knows what the NDPR it's all about, the associated risk and the implications, and there's a general understanding. So it keeps everybody on their toes. We know that when I receive any data at any data collection point and I see personally identifiable information, I know that there are potential risks that can culminate from this. So again, there's a collaboration between some critical business functions within the environment, the compliance team in charge of the implementation of these, the information security team looking at the data protection, technology provided the infrastructure and the solutions for these, the legal department looking at the data privacy and then working on in the events. And so every part of the organization form a team looking at all these, working together, ensuring the implementation, and then the executive support is key, is very, very key. So those were things we put together as an organization. And like I said, it's a process that's improving, we not only just define this process, we're at the level that the process is managing and the business understands. So that's it in a nutshell, in actual practical terms. The stakeholder engagement is very key, the understanding within the environment, the support, the executive support. So those are what we have going. Then how does a DPO handle data breach? Okay, so in the event of a breach, I would start again by saying that, yes, we know that risk cannot be totally eradicated. It cannot be completely removed, but it can be mitigated to the extent that the impact is as minimal as possible. So what we ensure that we do is that with all these that I have highlighted, with everyone understanding their parts to play in this framework, regulatory compliance, and then we ensure that the technology space, we have taken care, we're putting some protective mechanism in place. That's the policies, the processes, the procedure, the trainings, the intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, the network segregation and all that, the legal team working with every other part of the organization, ensuring how to ensure the data privacy, putting this clause in contractual agreements, and even carrying out enterprise awareness and brown bag sessions. Then we have infrastructure that can detect. So that's from the monitoring. So there's a team of incident management team, monitoring team, checking and receiving alerts. So let us know if there's a breach, or there's a scan, there's a perimeter scan, even network scan, penetrations, even vulnerability in terms of our malwares, antivirus. You know, those ones are already, those controls are in place. And the event that anything happens, there is a defined incident management protocols that would be invoked. So those are the processes and the protocols that has been lined up to ensure that in the event that it is missed at protection, it will be detected. And in the event that it cannot be 100% detected, there's a corrective measures in place to ensure that at the end of the day, the global impact is as minimal as possible. So in that way, you're sure that all risks are adequately taken care of and mitigated. Thank you.
Oluyemi, from that, and I hope our audience and also panelists would have also picked up something or learned something from that insight. So thank you very, very much again, once again, Oluyemi. If I may move over to Wayne. Wayne, again, I'm going to put you in the spot here because this is probably bringing back some things from memory, but I'm sure you'll probably handle this probably better than myself. My memory is not that good. From your wealth of experience, having been privileged to advise senior leaders within blue chip companies, both locally and globally, how can organizations embed a culture of effective risk and incident management?
I would say, first of all, it's a clear definition of what that organization's kind of risks are: high risk, low risk, medium risk, and also impact. So I'm sure in a lot of organizations that work is already there. Data privacy, data protection, and cyber needs to fuse into that to really become come to life. But what I have learned is organizations who do exercises, and I know it can be a little expensive and it can be a little bit inconvenient, but organizations who carry out exercises, so simulations and internal kind of testing, learn a lot, absolutely learn a lot, and they don't have to wait for an external body to tell them information they can find out themselves. And the key thing I'm learning from our work now is, especially with COVID and the breaches that are going on, especially ransomware, is that still learn from near misses. When a near miss happens, lean into it, get the one team together, really try to extract as much information from that as possible, because that will help an organization to repair, to build, and to move forward. 2 quick points, if I may. effective reporting structures and technology. Marijan explained this all earlier. You know, we need to have this very clear accountability stream, who reports to who has power to do what, who unlocks certain things, who close certain things off, and then we have the technology to hold that all together. Because the truth about it is GDPR and NDPR really requires technological input to make it work, to make it transparent, and to make it resilient so everyone can see, have one view of what's going on in terms of risk and incidents. And the third thing I'd say is a little bit vanilla and a little bit boring, but it's audit. It's actually having an audit and accountability trail. And that's the three levels of kind of risk and accountability, and making sure that there's a third party who's independent, who gives us feedback about how our systems are working and how risks are being identified, discovered, managed, and mitigated. So those are the things I've learned, but we are learning really from our work.
Thanks a lot for that, Wayne. And also briefly, if I can pull you in on this one in terms of third party, because you touched on it very briefly. What sort of risk would you say are associated with third parties, and what are the effective ways to manage these third party related risks?
Yes, so the first one is obviously information security risks. And the typical example is we have contracts with a load of service providers who say, oh, yes, we are ISO 7001, 762 compliant. But actually, that was an assessment done, a certification done years ago. It's never really updated. And the reality of how that person in your supply chain operates on a day-to-day is not in line with what you necessarily expect, and actually may have worn down over time. So the whole idea of making sure that an information security schedule in a contract, an agreement, an arrangement actually is fit for purpose, complies with NDPR, has the relevant checks and balances, and actually there is a check-in and an accountability. So that's one way of basically making sure that third-party risks are managed. The second thing are legal risks. And these lessons come from GDPR, and I'm sure NDPR as well. Organizations are always trying to offload their risks. And for example, let's say you're a data processor or a data administrator, the phrase used in NDPR, you will find, and check out for this, your lawyers need to be very sensitive, and your contract managers need to be very careful about looking at an update in a contract that tries to basically offload their risk to you or put unlimited liability for GDPR and NDPR issues. That is a problem, and that can hit your bottom line. So those legal risks about offloading liability and pushing things on other organizations that historically didn't have them, because of future compliance and fear, have to be checked. So in summary, I would say information security risks and legal risks need to be tracked and identified and managed. And obviously the legal team and the compliance team and the technology team and the procurement team as well. The procurement team, those managers who put contracts in place, manage contracts, they also need to be brought into the loop. And we all, as I keep saying, need to speak as one and track those through. I hope that's a bit of a long answer, but I hope that's helpful.
That is definitely very helpful, Wayne, and thanks for that insight. And again, I hope our attendees have benefited from that in-depth and insightful answer. Thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll see you again before we finish, as we will, Oluyemi. If I may defer to Marian at this point, Marian, I'm going to put you in the spot again. We have a synopsis here where the data protection impact assessments tend to be an important tool within the risk management, specifically within NDPR. And again, in some ways, this concept has been modeled or tweaked out of GDPR. What is the DPIA tool, and what benefit would it have to offer to organizations in Nigeria?
Okay. So, Joe, maybe I can answer this maybe in an unexpected way, and tell you all a story of what happened last year within our company. So we are a privacy management software vendor, right? We develop tools that should help other companies be compliant with GDPR, NDPR, and similar regulations, and help them in their day-to-day tasks. And as a part of our development, one of the things we are working on is the automated classification of personal data. Entity linking, meaning that our technology can actually connect your information, your personal data, if it's in like 10 emails, 20 documents, and in a database. So it can do the linking and connect it to the same person. And to do that, we are using machine learning, which is becoming more and more popular in the IT world. And there is like thousands and maybe tens of thousands of companies which are doing very similar thing like we did, applying machine learning and deep learning to solve some specific problem. And in our case, that was classification of personal data. And to do that, you need to train your machine learning algorithms, and to train them, you need a lot of data. Since we are doing the classification of personal data, actually what we need is a lot of personal data. So we went to lengths in order to collect enough personal data to be able to train our models. And when you think about that data, you need to have the training data and the testing data, and they need to be different sets of data, and it's a lot of personal data. Like we are talking millions and millions. So what we did is we went a bit morbid. So we understood that if a person is deceased, then actually their data is not longer seen as personal data under GDPR. So, we scraped Wikipedias about Nobel Prize winners, ex-presidents, and writers and actors and so on. So we did a lot of scraping of structured and unstructured data. And then the team, so my data science team, came to me one day and said, Marian, do you know about Facebook data breach? There's like 500 million of data, of personal data, just like we need. It's out there. It's like calling to us. And I mean, I looked at them, and they are, they are working on privacy software, but in their soul, they are still IT and data scientists. And I looked at them and I said, really, guys? And I think this paints a picture of the need of training and culture within the company. And people have ideas, they want to just use the data and build something cool and new. So a very, very good thing and a very good tool is to do a risk assessment before you start any new activity. And when you do a risk assessment, you do consultation with your, data protection officer and privacy team and your lawyers, and they will say if something is not right. And then you will go back to the drawing board and probably think of a new way to do that new cool thing without compromising personal data. So I mean, DPIA and risk assessments, they're here, they are meant to do that thing. They are here to protect the company from misuse of personal data. And maybe one more interesting thing, Joe, which I learned very recently, I became aware of it very recently, is that most of people, or a lot of people working in privacy, are lawyers. They have a legal background. And in Europe, we have more than 500,000 people working just as DPOs. And I came to realize that lawyers don't learn anything about risk management on the college, in school. So maybe it's, I'm generalizing, maybe it's not the same all over the world, but as far as I can see and as far as I learned, they don't. So I think that that's a big issue, and everyone working in privacy should, become more familiar with risk management. Actually, a good place to start is go to dataprivacymanager.net. You can download a white paper called Privacy Risk Management. I think that's one way to go. But of course, there is much more to learn, and everyone who is in privacy should know how to tackle risks, risk assessments, DPIAs, and the likes.
Very much for that, Marian. Thank you very much. I believe, yeah, you went about in a slightly unorthodox way. I'm not. I could concur that lawyers probably have a lot on their plate. So probably the first priority is not necessarily to pick up everything. But I will say that there is probably more emphasis or another weight placed on their shoulders to pick up some of these things. So I'm sure as time goes on, you will find that more and more lawyers will become conversant with the areas and the level of expertise. I don't expect them to jump and pick up everything IT and technical in the same vein. But moving on to sort of next phase of our program today, we're going to have a brief demonstration. Marian, so I'm bringing you back on board again, I'm afraid, a quick demo of the risk management and incident management demo. So again, I'm giving you the floor, Marian. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Looking at the time, I'm going to try to be very quick.
Don't worry, we can accommodate an extra minute. I'm sure attendees want to see this. So it's better to see it now in case they will see it further, but it's better to get a quick but brief insight. Thanks, Marian.
Okay, I think you can see my screen.
I believe we can, Marian, yes. I hope everybody can.
Okay, so we had previous webinars when we talked about different modules of Data Privacy Manager and how they can help companies, like data processing inventory with records of processing activities, and third-party management with central management of all third parties with whom the organization is sharing personal data, and the consent management and data subject requests, and so on and so on. So one of the things which I will show is the risk register, where we have a central representation of all the risks which were raised along the way as a part of the privacy management program. And we can see that in this case, we have a couple of them. Some of them are high risk score. And actually for each of the risks, we can check more information, and in this case, this is a potential risk of a data breach due to low level of user access monitoring on a website database. We had some issues there. We can see that this risk is high because of the combination of the likelihood and impact. And we can see who is the risk owner. As I mentioned before, this is a collaboration tool. So, I mean, there is a lot of users using our platform, and on average, I would say there is somewhere between 30 and 100 users within a company, within an enterprise company using Data Privacy Manager. And okay, and we can see also the proposed responses, and in this case, it's migration of webshop database to a centrally managed database. And actually, when we look at the risks, the risk methodology and the risk matrix can be customized for each company, because you, Joe, previously mentioned that privacy risk, this is not the same thing as financial or operational risks. However, companies do have their standards around risk matrices, for example, so they can customize, you know, the impact levels and the likelihoods with the description of it, and then the risk score levels. They can also change the look and feel of the risk matrix. And then when they are done, you know, it can be 5 times 5 or maybe 6 times 6. 5 times 5 is like a normal. And then they can also adjust risk score. So we won't be doing that at this point, since we already have some risks identified. Maybe one interesting thing about the risks is the source of the risks. So what we can see here in the risk register is like the central representation of all the risks raised, which are probably the result of a risk assessment like a DPIA. And we can see the source of the risk. So in this case, we have the source type processing activity, and this is the market activities and communications. And for example, if we go back to the context of the processing activities, we can see, for example, for the marketing, that anyone who has the permissions to edit and change and keep it up to date, this specific marketing activity, they can also check the risks and see who is managing a specific risk, what is the problem in terms of, for example, lack of security measures or technical organizational measures of any kind. Maybe another thing to show very briefly now is the incident management and the register of data breaches. And very similarly to risk register, we have the collaboration and the central view of all these things in one place. So what I'm looking at now is one of the incidents we had as a company. So this is, of course, fictional company, fictional incidents, but anything that happens which is kind of labeled as a data protection incident should be registered here in the tool. So we can see this is the loss of user data. We can see the impact. This is medium impact. Maybe it would make more sense to check on some of the major impacts. So we can see here we have a newsletter breach where newsletter was sent to wrong email addresses. This is very common. It's still a breach, right? And the incident type is misdirected email. There is different incident types, of course, that can happen. There was the need to inform data subjects. We can again see who is the owner of this specific incident. We can see that this was finished or resolved. The affected systems were the social media platform and the newsletter platform. And the affected data types in this case were the name and surname and email address, like different domains that were different data, personal data that was leaked in this incident. So this is very easy to use. I mean, the power of this is in the collaboration and different users being able to collaborate on these things, but also in having everything in one place. With, of course, what we have on the platform is the record level security. So not all users who can log into the platform can actually see everything. There is also history for all of the entities, all of the data in the platform. And I think it's very important to note that we do think about security, and we have built in very, very robust security mechanisms, both for authentication and authorization to the platform, but also for the record level security in each module. So, for example, both in risk and incident and data processing, inventory and consent management, it's not like that every user to the platform can see everything. It's more like the user with the right permissions can see the right data. Okay, Joe, I hope this was informative enough. I can see that we have exceeded our time.
Thank you very, very much. It was, Marianne, and I'm sure a lot of our attendees will be encouraged and moved to at least, you know, take out part of our offering, as well as, you know, get a trial. If I may, at this point in time, I would like to move to our Q&A session. The question is, looking at various regulations, how can enterprise navigate through, for example, data retention requirements by NIDA? I think specifically the one we have, the question is BO-FIA 2020, and the CBN Act and the Cybersecurity Act of 2021, if they differ in their requirements. So I'll read that question out again. And looking at the various regulations, how can an enterprise navigate through, for example, data retention requirements as set by NIDA in the both year 2020, NDIC, CBN Act, and the Cybersecurity Act of 2021. So either Olayemi or Wayne, if you could offer an answer to that. I'll ladies first, so I'll open that to Oluyemi in the first instance.
So for me, talking to the question, looking at the question directly, it says data retention by NIDA, the BOFIA, the Bank and Other Financial Institutions Act, NDIC, CBN, cybersecurity. Yes, I understand the volume of this as an organization, as a professional, being regulated, and you see all these things thrown at you. Yeah, it can look like it's overwhelming. It can look like it's overwhelming, but sincerely speaking, the first approach is to dimension these requirements, regulatory requirements. What are the objectives? What do you want to achieve? So if I look at this now, if I look at the data retention by NDPR, as we've been talking about, so it's talking of data privacy, data protection. When you look at data protection, is as good as cybersecurity or information security. And then the data privacy is just the rights, the consent of the data subjects, which you take on one side. So you go to the BOFIA, you look at it, that talks about the operational risk, the market risk, the financial risk. Again, it talks about the cyber risk too. So you look at that, you break it down. CBN is similar to NDIC, they both pursue the same. Okay, the NDIC talks about anti-money laundering and all that too as part of it. NDIC talks about the anti-money laundering and the operational risk and all that. The CBN talks about the market risk, financial risk, information security risk. Then the cyber security on its own. So as an organization, the first thing you do is you do a mapping. So what are the requirements of this? What am I expected? What is the outcome of this? And then all the regulations. So there's always an overlap. You would see that there might be 2-3 regulations, but they may be looking at things, so there might be an intersection. For instance, when you look at the ISO 27001 for information security management, and then you look at the NIST for cybersecurity management, if you do an overlap, you see that they may come with the same acronyms or comes with the same framework. This one will say plan, do, check. This one will say protect, detect, mitigate, respond. But if you break it down and look at the controls, they are all looking at the same issues and proposing the same controls. So you just need to map them, find where they overlap. So that would be your easy way to approach all this. Yes, I know that we will talk about the money available, the infrastructure to put in place, the people, and not every organization is as deep pockets as the others. But what I just want to know is that they always have an overlapping point. They always have an interrelativity. So look at that and from there begin to dimension them and then begin to put in processes in place. You would be able to meet. Then from all these two, you look at your processes. They all have different requirements. Which one is applicable to you? As long as you meet based on your risk appetite, you meet what is applicable to you and you control. And the ones that your organization has been able to accept and say, yes, we have a threshold to accept this risk. All these compliance agencies, when they come around, they just want to see the effort that you have been put into complying. oh, we have been able to look at this. We've seen this is where it impacts us. These are the controls that we've put in place. This is our risk threshold. This is our risk appetite. We can accept this risk. And then this is what we're looking at. So I guess it may be among us, but if you sit down to look at it, it's achievable, yes, at a cost, but not all the times that you throw money at it. There are times that you have processes in place and you have compensating controls till you gradually get to the point of being able to meet all these lists. But one thing I can assure you at the end of the day is that they all have value they would provide, because if any of this risk crystallizes, it can erode all the profits of the organization in a sweep. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Oluyemi. Thanks for that. I would like to, at this point, provide some context around what we've all heard from our panelists today, and also throughout the course, as well as the demo. I think it's quite evident that how risk is handled, or how risk needs to be handled, be it vis-a-vis with some other aspects of organizational risk, as Marian touched on during his demo, as highlighted by Oluyemi in the context of what risk management strategies should be addressed, and also within the context of the answers provided by Wayne as to how engagement and wider strategies in terms of the implication on third parties should be looked at. The bottom line is that risk cannot be swept under the carpet, or it cannot be passed on in terms of the buck to somebody else. And again, as all our panelists have alluded to, it has to be treated as something quite critical. The implications or impact to anything pertaining to reputational damage, as we've seen and noted from some high-profile cases globally, again, not having the right risk and processes. I'm sure we've all heard about the likes of BA and Capsule One out with, and I'm sure the number of high-profile cases that are brewing as we speak within Africa, unfortunately, it simply cannot be swept aside anymore. I would obviously like to open the floor again to our panelists. There's just one more aspect, and again, this has obviously been highlighted or covered. Simple question. Again, it's not simple, but I'm sure you can offer some insight. And Wayne, I'm sure you might be able to present some context. What are the consequences? What would you say are the consequences of poor risk management and instead management as part of it? And what are your recommendations as to how they should be avoided?
Really good question, Joe. There are so many war stories, and we don't have time to really get into all the horrors that take place. But I think one thing I would say, I've been privileged enough, we as an organization have been privileged enough to deal with a lot of cloud clients and a lot of clients who have a lot of consumers. And when we deal with a lot of their kind of risk management practices and lack thereof, two things come out: cost and lack of trust. The truth about it, I know that spending money in can be seen as, oh, is it worth it? Is it properly leveraged? Oh, it's too much. But the truth about it, a lot of that spend is an investment to understand your suite of risks. And therefore, it's a leveraging across. And what you don't want is to be surprised into a situation where you're trying to patch a leaky supply chain with sub processes and sub processes, and all of these kind of technology, information security risks are being pushed down the line, and then it's very hard to manage because you have to pay for the IT forensics. You have to get the lawyers in. If there's a breach, you've got to do all of that work. So cost is very much a real issue to think about. But also, and we found this very week for one of our government clients, the loss of trust is actually a real thing. I know people say, oh, our customers don't trust us. If your customers don't trust you, they become very problematic. They'll be very quick to complain. They'll be very quick not to buy, and they will also not become mature customers. And with mature customers, you get more funds, you get, a longer tail of income. So the trust thing is really important. You don't want, if you're a consumer business or the public sector who faces the public, an unruly, untrusting set of customers who will hang on with you just because they can't find anybody else. But as soon as it's someone else who they think is half decent, they're gonna jump. They're gonna jump. And the final point is they will spend as little with you as they can get away with. Those are the metrics. And we've seen this, especially after data breaches, especially retail data breaches. We see customers just say, right, okay, I'm on this tariff. Okay, I'm going to go down to the minimum tariff, and I'm going to kind of watch you. And I'm going to put requests in. So cost in terms of remediation and dealing with all of that is an issue and should be really understood. And also the trust factor, which can sometimes sound a bit kind of wishy-washy, but the trust turns into the real world profit and loss and the aggregation of clients moving on or just kind of minimum impacts with you. I hope that's helpful. Just 2 points that we've come across.
Thank you very much again. We're very succinctly put, and it does offer, if not anything, it offers food for thought in this sort of final stage of our webinar. But thank you very much for that again, and it has touched on a few points. I mean, our panelists have been very, very insightful, and I hope you've benefited from the insights of Oluyemi Obadere from NGX, Wayne Clegon from Privacy Solved, and Marian Bratchett from Data Privacy Manager. It's been a real privilege having them. I cannot thank them enough from taking out time from their very busy and hectic schedules. Okay, we've had the results in based on our brief poll. The first one, very quickly, sort of a tight neck and neck there. Two answers there. Number of respondents picked outsourced services to external providers. Again, questionable. You do need third parties in a lot of engagement these days. We've seen it with outsourced services out with the UK or out with of Africa. Impact of cyber attacks. We're seeing a huge spate of attacks. I think I read somewhere that they were well in excess. I don't know if the figure is right, maybe too many zeros, in excess of 190,000 assets between March 2020, when there was sort of a lockdown official in some countries, and present day. Inadequate staff awareness and training. Again, this has come up quite consistently in a number of our polls. So I'll say pretty much all of them have some kind of impact. It's very hard to pick two. There's probably more than two. Second one, our respondents basically responded true to the fact that they believe that risk management, data privacy risk management is somebody else's responsibility. That shouldn't be the case, but here we are. The third one, third question being, what are the most common NDPR compliance risk? Again, most of our respondents came back with there's no compliance process or practice in place. That is of concern. Please do reach out to us at DataWorks Analytics, depend on your geographical location. Definitely Privacy Solved, or if you want professional insights, by all means reach out to Olayemi as well, or DPM. And again, the final one, does an organization use tools like NDPR audits and assessments? Again, the answer, a concern is no. Again, please reach out to us to provide you some guidance and information on that in terms of support. Thank you very, very much for attending this webinar, and we look forward to having you back again. And thanks to our attendees again. Thank Thank you very much, and I hope you've enjoyed this webinar. And please keep an eye out for any recording or deliverables as a consequence of this. Thank you very much, and have a great day. Thank you.